Hey guys, it's me Varun Inamdar and welcome to this stunning webinar organized by You and Nebraska Soybean Board. Well, this is one of those webinars where you and I can interact from our own home kitchens. Well, this is where I am, of course, in a lockdown, but that doesn't stop us from continuing the learning. Well, this is a duck masterclass today. Well, duck is a wonderful poultry. Well, it is somewhere between a tenderloin and a poultry. Well, it is considered to be a red meat. Let's first begin with actually cutting it. I'm going to divide it into two parts because I'm going to show you two different recipes today. One is a classic duck which is served with orange sauce. Well, this orange sauce, I call it an orange gastric. What I have done is I've taken 2 cups of orange juice, fresh orange juice of course, and you add in some sugar, just a touch of salt, just a touch of olive oil, you add in some peppercorns, add in some red onions, just a little bit of vinegar to just kind of balance the acidity and the flavor, and you reduce it till it's literally half the original quantity. Well, you do not generally reduce further than that because it just kind of becomes extremely sticky. You're looking at a saucy consistency even after it comes down to room temperature, so remember that. Well, the first thing is of course to thaw a duck. This duck is from USA. The first thing is to remove it of course from the package. And here transfer this on the board. Now, various parts of the duck, and it's as good as any other poultry. Well, you have the wing and the winglet, you have 2 legs, you have the parson's nose, and here you have the 2 breasts, 2 legs, of course, 2 thighs here, 2 drumsticks, and the spinal cord, and it absolutely remains the same. Let's first begin with cutting the 2 breasts. For that, of course, you need a sharp knife and you need a clean swab, which is extremely important. You find the center bone, and on the either sides, you give a gash like so. Well, you realize that there's a soft bone right here. You go right up to the soft bone and you stop there. If a knife is sharp enough, like this, see? You find this white bone, which is a soft bone, you just stop there and you keep continuing the cut like so. Be very gentle with the bird. See, it has to be an absolute clean cut, like so. Here you go. Deep into, and here if you see, it's literally come out nice and clean, and that's what you're looking at. You go around this part here, you'll find a little bit of a tougher bone here. You just snip it, slide it very nicely, very carefully, and you can do the same on the other side as well. But the other side is just a mirror image, it's just a reflection to just follow the same thing that you did on this side. Well, initially you could also rip it like so, but very gently. You do not need to be harsh with any meat for that matter. Here you go. Right? Now, right around the turn, you snip it, slide it, and here comes out the first of the duck breasts. Well, that's how the duck breast looks. Just keep it aside for now and move on to the second breast. Well, you can do it either sides. Now if you see, I actually used the other side, the other angle, and that's where you get the second breast. Now, you wipe, of course, your gloves clean, your knife clean again, and now you get into cutting the leg and the drumstick and the thigh on the whole. Give it this cut, remove this kind of an attachment which is here, and here if you see, there's this plump part which is actually the softest part of any poultry. You go around that, that's called the oyster of the bird. You go around that and literally you find another bone which is here. You break it like so, which is extremely important. because you're literally disjointing it, you're removing it from another joint. You go around this, and now it's extremely simple. All you do is just pull this to a certain point and then cut it the way you want. As simple as that. So that's the first leg. Let me keep this aside. And this entire thing now needs to get wiped because, of course, you need to use a clean swab for this. Do not use a used one at any point in time. You can actually, in your butcher kitchens, also have a swab which is kept primarily and predominantly for meats. Well, you wipe the knife clean. And here. Now this is one of the most important parts, one of the most critical parts in duck making, which is actually kind of done to bring out flavor. Now if you see, this is the breast, and if you know a little bit about duck, most of the flavor is actually in the meat, yes, but there is a thick skin like this, if you see, and right under the skin there is a deposition of fat. Either which ways, you check the duck leg or you check the breast. Now if you see, the skin has heavy deposition of fat. Now the whole idea here is to trim all of this beautifully well, as much as you can. See this? Of course, you need to retain the meat, you do not need to cut into the meat, but there is a little bit of a silver skin here that needs to be removed. And trust me, the knife needs to be extremely sharp, because of course you're doing butcher, and butchery needs, of course, skills, but it also needs good quality tools. So you slice all of this like so. There you go. There you go. Right? And now is the time to give this its shape. So what you need to do is trim all around like this. All the fat needs to come out like so. And this is where you actually give shape to the breast of the bird. See? Like so. You go around this, you just give it a nice cut. And there you go. Right? With this, your first breast is cut and ready. Just a little bit of a cut here. And here you see one beautiful piece which is done and ready. Similarly, let's do the other breast as well. Okay, now mind you, all these trimmings are also wonderful cuts, yeah? This should not go in the garbage, this should not go in your bins. Just use it well for good stir fries. If you're into Oriental food and you love making something Chinese, something Oriental, just a little bit of white spice and this would be fantastic, let me tell you. Yeah? Just cut all of this well. Here you go, here you go. Okay, and cutting the silver skin, which is very important, otherwise it just becomes chewy and inedible. Here you go. Super. So I'm just keeping this aside for now. Okay, the next step is to cut the chicken leg, which is extremely interesting a part, because of course this is something that becomes nice and literally like a plump part after it gets cooked. So this entire thing, if it could get nicely and neatly trimmed, let me tell you, let me show it to you. Now, all this remainder fat which is here can get trimmed out. Of course, it has a little bit of meat to it, but that's about it. So that can easily go. See, I'm trimming off the excess fat which is not required. And also, if you see in the whole bargain, I'm kind of also giving it a shape. Now see, all of this is the fat that I was talking about, which is under the skin. Literally, this is a lean meat. If of course you leave the fat aside or you leave the skin aside, it's an absolute lean meat. And like I said, it is just like red meat. So it needs to be cooked somewhere in between a red meat and a poultry, which is primarily important. Now, what I'm doing is I'm Frenching the bone. So you just kind of give an incision at around 1 inch from the base, from the bottom of the leg, like so. Just turn it all around, like so. And the next step is to hold this with the help of a duster and just kind of release it. Just twist it around like so. See, you're just twisting it around like you literally squeeze someone's ear. I'm just joking. And you literally pull this like so. Yeah, so that's where, if you see, you have this Frenched bone which is done here and ready. You just scrape off the unrequired trimmings and that's about it. And here if you see, there's this wonderful, literally Frenched bone, which is a Frenched duck leg. Yeah, so this is done and ready. All the trimmings of course go separately in a plate. Collect all of this because all of this is required. You clean the entire cutting board, of course. You need to sanitize it later as well. But for now, just wipe it off so that it doesn't slide, it doesn't slip, which is very important. Now, what you need to do with the duck leg is just add in a few slices of onion. You can add in a stick of cinnamon, you can add in some star anise and just give it a boil. You need to boil this for at least half an hour till the meat is well done. What I am making with the duck leg is a Kerala stew. It's a white stew which of course uses coconut milk and some vegetables. It's also spiced. The spice that I'm going to use today is an absolute simple basic star anise. So remember that I'm not overcomplicating it, I'm keeping it very simple. But before that, let's come to the breast because this is still not done. What we need to do is, I'm keeping this aside, we need to of course take this with its skin side on top and give it a few gashes. Now these gashes are to be done of course with a sharp knife, literally not seen, right? At this moment if you see, just the ones that will go a little deeper, you'll be able to see, but trust me, you're not wanting to go that deep, you're just giving some superficial gashes like this. That's about it. This is basically called scoring a duck. Similarly on the other side as well, for the other duck breast, which is the other side literally of the duck. You give it a few gashes, give it a few scores. Now, the whole idea of opening up these scores is basically to render the fat. Now, like I said, and I'm saying that time and again, duck basically has the duck breast, it has the skin, and it has duck fat between the breast and the skin. So, the whole idea here is to open that out. Now, the next step is to switch the induction on. And on absolutely cold flame, you need to place this. Now, if you're doing this in an induction, it has to be literally on 0. I've still not switched it on. Once this is placed, then you need to switch it on, and then for at least 5 to 6 minutes, you just leave it absolutely low so that the fat literally starts melting at the bottom, and that's where it converts into duck fat. So let's look at that. Now if you see in this case, it's just like 5 to 7 seconds and literally the duck has started releasing its fat. At this stage, I'm going to help release some more fat, I'm going to actually reduce the temperature further down and just wait for a little while, because what happens in this case is the fat, which is the second lining, literally like a second skin of the duck, between the breast and the skin, it starts opening up. Now, I know a lot of my chef friends, or I know a lot of my friends who eat a duck meat, they like that level of fat. But trust me, if you really cook a duck rightly, by the end of cooking the breast, the fat would have literally come out of the duck breast, and that would have become the duck fat that later would be used. Now, I'm sure by now you would have read in your cookbooks different styles of making duck, different ways in which a duck is served. Literally, this is one of those ways in which the duck breast is literally seared. You just give it a flip a little later. I'll show you. Now, here if you see the scoring that was done, and this is not the real time to actually flip it. So let me flip it back. This was just to show it to you. If you literally flip it back, you will realize and see that it just kind of begins to turn golden brown in color. I'll just increase it lightly because I want it that way. Now, when you're doing it on an open flame, which I'm believing that most of you would do, what you need to do is take an absolute cold pan, keep the duck breast, and then just lightly, absolutely lightly, wait for all the duck fat to come out, and that will basically become the base. Now, if you notice here, I'm not using butter, I'm not using olive oil, I'm not using any oil, any fat. It's just basic duck breast and the duck fat that is now getting released and becoming part of the final dish. Well, if you see at this stage, I've not even salted the duck. There's no salt, there's no pepper, anything of that matter, because I really do not want it to be flavored at this point in time. Because trust me, if you add in black pepper at this point in time, it's all going to leach out into the fat, and you're not looking at that. However, if you're adding just a little bit of salt, I would suggest you not do it. Do it later, and you will see the difference. You know, when you start making duck regularly, you'll start seeing the difference. This, however, is possibly one of my most favorite poultry meat, because this is like red meat. It's literally like tenderloin. It's like red meat where you can also serve it medium rare or rare. Well, I like it that way, but I leave it completely to you. You leave this for a good 3 minutes just in its own fat, and you'll see the difference. Let's flip it over. Yeah, you see, it's literally getting nice golden brown. And you're looking at that. Let me flip the other one also and show it to you. Literally. See this? Now, let's reduce the flame even more. Let a lot of fat come out. Now, if you see, there's literally like a good 3 to 4 tablespoons of duck fat which is oozed out. But I'm looking at some more, because all the fat, like I said, needs to come out. Now, if you see, if you come a little closer and have a look, it's actually become nice and plump at this stage. And you're literally looking at it plumping up. Because what has happened is, in this case, a lot of steam has got into it. Now, this is very interesting, guys. My mouth is already watering. The skin is actually getting caramelized, it's getting nice and crisp. And you're looking at an absolute crisp bottom, which is the skin. Then the fat, which is the second layer, is literally oozing out into duck fat. And then you have the duck breast, which, you know, the oil also releases steam. So with the steam, this is actually plumping up, literally like a steak. Can you imagine that? Now, see this. See, it's become nice and plump. It's absolutely rare at this point in time. And here, if you see, because you see this, here, if you see, the skin is absolutely right here, and you see the duck fat is oozing out. That's what you're looking at. You're basically, what you're doing is you're exciting the other part of the fat to kind of heat up and start releasing. Now, of course, this room is filled with the aroma of the duck, and I personally love this. Now, there are various ways of using duck fat. Fries is something that you like. Once your fries are done, you can just take the duck fat. You can flavor the duck fat with some coriander, with some red chilies, or if you want to Indianize it, you can add in some curry leaves, you can add in some jeera and all of that. And you can make like a concentrated flavored oil. Once your fries are done and ready, just splash a little, grate in some cheese or grate in some parmesan, and that's done. A second thing is you take scallops of potato, literally like a nice thick potato. You just parboil them lightly, and then you cook the remainder till they become nice and soft within, absolutely steamy, absolutely custard-like, and nice and crisp golden brown on the outside, literally like a potato steak. You can do that. You can add a portobello mushrooms that you can literally stir fry in this. You can stir fry some vegetables, you can stir fry oyster mushrooms, you can use this also in your seafood. Duck fat and a seared steak of fish also goes wonderfully well, because duck fat is something which is absolutely well flavored. Another thing, of course, another thing that you would have read in your books is confit of a duck, which is nothing but duck leg, which is preserved in its own fat. What you do in that case is you use duck legs like this, and you use it, of course, it's a completely different recipe, and I'm sure you know that by now. Now, coming back to this, literally, it's become nice and crisp, like so, but I'm just being a little more tempted, and I'm keeping it for just a little more while. Oof. This is getting outstanding, guys. I hope you guys are enjoying what you're watching, because this is the first of its kind webinar, which is of course powered by You Chef, it's powered by Nebraska Soybean Board, and it's fantastic. And thank you very much to D.Y. Patil, who's actually organizing this for all of you sitting out there in your homes. This is of course the duck from USA. Okay, now let's give this a flip. Okay, and literally I'm going to keep this on the other side for 2 minutes precisely by the clock. Now, like I said, it could be cooked like a steak, because this is something that could go extremely well like a red meat. And I'm saying that again and again, guys, because this is not to be treated like chicken or turkey. It's a completely different poultry. It's a completely different meat. Cook it this way. Try cooking it this way, and trust me, it's fantastic. Now, the next side is literally 2 minutes in its own fat. We're not adding a blob of butter or olive oil or anything. But what I'm going to do is I am going to quickly snip a little bit of rosemary right from here. Okay, I'm just going to take some rosemary, literally, and I'm going to push it in the duck fat. And now if you see, the duck is actually going to get flavored with rosemary. Of course, it is self-flavored. It literally needs only salt and pepper to go with it. But what I've also done is I've added some rosemary. And now the next step, and I'm sure you've seen this time and again, is taking this fat and pushing it on top of the duck breast again. Because what happens in this case is the duck fat is now heated up. And with this, what happens is, with the flavor of the rosemary, it becomes absolutely well flavored, guys. See this? That's how you're supposed to do. Of course, because this is an induction, I can't tilt it. But again, if you're working in on an hot range, you can of course tilt a little so that all of this gets collected on one side, and you just baste this in its own fat. Yeah. Again, it's plumping up, if you see very closely, and now it's got a beautiful whiff of rosemary. Now, I know for a fact that at this stage, the flame literally goes off, or this goes off induction, and what I prefer doing is I allow it to rest in the same pan. I do not get it outside. I do not rest it on the cutting board. I allow it to rest in its own pan, because what I feel is there is that reticent heat, there's that residual heat which will just kind of about to continue cooking the duck, and that's what we're looking at, because this will be nice and literally medium on the outside, and it will be a little rare medium on the inside, and that's what I'm looking at. And imagine, this got that wonderful aroma of rosemary. And literally, I can feel that I've actually cooked a steak here, because this is so wonderful in flavor. Let's keep this aside, let it literally confit for 5-7 minutes in its own juices. And what I'm doing is, I'm taking another pan, I'm taking another sauce pot, and I'm beginning with the second recipe so that the plating can literally happen simultaneously. Let me get the leg aside, because I've already cut another leg. I'm cleaning this, and for now I'm just turning this on the other side, because of course you need to take care of all of those little things of health, hygiene, sanitation. Now this is a webinar which is, I think, fantastic. Well, I'm having a wonderful time, and I want all of you to make your questions, write down your questions, jot down any doubts that you have, any questions that you have. It could be about the duck, it could be about the brand, it could be about the recipe, it could be about the flavor profile, it could be about accompaniment, sauce, anything that literally comes to your mind. Keep jotting it down, because I want all of you to stick around while I, after this session, literally answer your questions. Well, now I am making a Kerala stew. Now this is a stew which is my all-time favorite, literally so. And this in today's times also is fantastic, because we all have power in our homes. Indian homes mostly have coconuts as well. So coconut is something which is literally stocked. If not, then we have coconut milk, or we have coconut cream, or we have dried coconut, or we have desiccated coconut. If you have any of those dry mediums, you can soak them literally overnight so that they kind of regain moisture, they kind of rebuild on its moisture part. Next day, run it into milk. Now, if you can come closer, I'm going to literally start this recipe with curry leaf oil. Now curry leaf oil is literally an extraction of curry leaf in coconut oil. Let's swirl this around, and to this I'm adding in sliced onions and sliced chilies. Right, it's a wonderful flavor because literally it's duck which is flavored with coconut, and what I'm doing is I'm also adding in a predominant spice, and that is star anise. Well, this is one of my most favorite spices, and what I'm doing in this case is flavoring the Kerala stew. Now this is literally like a white stew that you make with vegetables and with chicken, but what I have done in this case is I've kind of made it adaptable to duck, which is a poultry, and I like cooking it just perfect. Like not overdone, not rare. In this case, what I have done, and which I have told you earlier, is you take the duck leg and you French it like how I showed you, and you take this with a little bit of flavoring and you cook it for literally 30 minutes. It could be 40 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, depending on the kind of doneness you like. I like it exactly cooked for 30 minutes, and you have to retain the stock. Of course, if you're adding flavorings like chilies and onions and spices, you strain all of that because you don't require that anymore. And then you bring it with the stock. The next thing that goes in this is some chopped ginger. Now ginger again is a prominent flavor in something like this because it's going to bring out the flavor from the coconut milk. To this, you're going to add in some curry leaves which are washed and dried. And this finally is going to have a few more flavors. Let's begin with some vegetables. Now this is boiled potato, boiled carrots, and some green peas. Give this a toss. Now, this is a stew literally that you can make a little thicker, you can make it absolutely thinner, you can make it like a curry. The whole idea here is to make it saucy so that you can literally dip in your bread, you can dip in any bread or anything of that matter and actually juice it up. Now this would also work wonderfully well with your steamed rice or your jeera rice or your flavored rice, but for me it's always literally a pav or a bread. Now to this I'm going to add in coconut milk. Now this is thick and thin coconut milk. I'm just giving it a stir. Now I'm adding both these types of milk or both these variety or both these extractions of coconut milk because and only because the duck here is completely cooked. If at all you add in raw duck at this stage or raw leg at this stage, which could also be an option of course, but for that you do not need cooked vegetables. You need raw vegetables to begin with. You need a little chunkier size. You need the leg or the breast or anything that you want to cook. I'm showing it to you with the leg because again that's my favorite meat when it comes to a stew. To this I'm going to add in both the extractions together, and along with this I'm going to add in the duck leg which is pre-cooked. And to this I'm going to add in the duck stock. Now duck stock is basically an extraction of liquid which has come from cooking the duck leg. So it's as simple as that. I'm going to flavor this with salt because again salt is something that's going to bring out a lot of flavor. All the flavor of your duck, of the coconut, of the onions, of the vegetables, of the curry leaf is all going to come out like so. And I personally absolutely love flavoring this with lots and lots of black pepper. So I'm adding in black pepper. Now I'm overdoing this because I love black pepper, but you can have your own little versions of making this stew. Let's increase the flame a little. Let this come to a roll boil, and that's, trust me, going to be the most fantastic duck Kerala stew. Okay, now you guys of course need to tell me what you guys are doing in the house. How is work happening? How's work happening, of course. How's studies happening, because of course I'm sure you guys are studying in the house because that is not stopping. I'm also doing my bit of study. I'm also learning. I'm also picking up a book almost literally every day from my shelf. And I'm also having fun. Of course, movies are happening, television is happening, the internet is happening, cooking like this is happening, a lot of radio is happening, a lot of print interviews are happening, but of course, I lead a little different life from you. So you, of course, when I come and interact with you in a Q&A, I would like to hear all of that from you as well. Let's just wait for this to come on a roll boil, and that's going to be as much as 30 seconds literally. Yay, I'm super excited about this whole webinar, about this whole class. Literally, let's get the duck breast out, because this has been sitting for a little while. Literally. Okay, now we're not going to use the duck fat in this recipe, but that does not mean you're going to throw this. This is going to stay aside, because there are multiple ways in which you can use this. You can also make some wonderful salads out of this. You can make some dressings out of this. Off goes the flame in this case as well. Now, I'm plating this in a very different way, because I like it literally fancying things up. I like things which are Indian, but they look a little modern, they look a little more conventional and all of that. So I'm retaining the curry leaf oil. Let me move all this aside, because this is literally not required. Okay, the duck breast is here, the oil is here, and I'm keeping these things here because that's of course a very critical important recipe as well, which is your next bit of the sauce. Remember we spoke about the orange gastric? Well, gastric, I'm just repeating. I've taken some orange juice, which is literally 2 cups of orange juice, just a touch of oil, just a touch of some flavor. You can use it, you can not use it, that's completely personal. Now, I'm literally turning all of this right here. Now if you see, it's beautiful, it's colorful, and it's looking fantastic to me personally. Well, this is your duck stew. Well, that's the first of the recipe. The next is to sharpen the knife, because we are moving on to duck breast. Well, moving the herb aside, and if you see, it's very plump. We're going to slice it off like this. See? It's dripping, it's literally oozing, but if you see, it's just beautifully cooked. Well, it's important to rest any meat like that, and duck is no different. See, you're literally slicing it half a centimeter, literally like this. Yeah, and the next thing is again a little bit of a different take. What I'm doing is I'm using a tawa, and I'm transferring all of this wonderful duck meat. It's neat and look very nice if I do something like this. See, literally fanning it out. It's important to wipe all of the drips, because you're not looking at that. The rosemary of course goes back. And here comes this wonderful sauce, which is the gastric. Now this, of course, I'm going to put it on the side. But again, you can add it on it. You can literally dunk it in, serve it in. There you go. For me, this is more than enough. But again, you're your best judge. You can add in, you can reduce. That's a complete personal choice. The next of salt to something like this. Because remember the fact that we had not salted this at all. To this, I'm adding in some black pepper, as simple as basic as this. And I'm doing something fancy because I want all of you to see this. Now this is black salt. This is literally black salt that I picked up some years back. These are some wonderful flakes that I thought I'll use in this recipe. And I would want all of you to in fact start picking up these little things when you travel here and there, so that it just kind of starts adding in to the repertoire of the dishes that you make. And finally, I'm going to add in some orange rind. Well, on that note, these two recipes are done and ready. Now, finally, to the stew that we made, I'm going to add in some curry leaf oil so that it becomes nice. You can of course pick a little bit of curry leaf extract from the bottom also, which has become nice and thick. And here you have two dishes ready. Well, one is of course your duck breast, which is literally pan-seared, and it has orange gastrique, it has some rosemary, it has some black pepper, it has some flakes of salt, and the other recipes are quintessential Indian, literally a South Indian recipe, a Kerala stew. Guys, my mouth is already watering, and I'm sure yours is also by now, because this one has the complete leg, which is French. It has some vegetables, it has potatoes, it has carrots, you can add in some beans, you can add in sweet potato, you can add in pumpkins, you can add in a lot of things, but the essence here is curry leaf and ginger.